Welcome to Hebrew School from Homeschooling Torah. My name is Alephbeit and this is lesson 2. And today we're going to learn the first 4 Hebrew consonants and a little bit more about them and a couple more vowels as well. So in the last lesson, we learned about open syllables and closed syllables. We learned a sheen, a beit, and a tav, and we learned how to combine those into syllables. We always write the vowel underneath, and we sometimes that's the end of the syllable, just if it was like that, or sometimes we make a closed syllable by closing it afterwards with another consonant. Now I would like to teach you all of the consonants of the Hebrew Alephbeit, and we're going to start with that. And so I'm going to erase this real quick. The first letter is the Aleph. Now sadly, the Aleph doesn't make a sound. So what do I mean it doesn't make a sound? Well, the Aleph always has to have a vowel under it, and whatever vowel comes underneath it, that's the sound that it makes. Now, often that vowel is a kamatz, like we learned last week, or it could be just a patach, like we learned last time. So that means that it often says ah, and it probably originally did. It comes from the sound aleph. Some people think that the aleph looks like an ox, and an ox makes the ah sound, and an ox is very strong. Now, I'm not any good at drawing, but let's pretend, told you I wasn't any good at drawing, but let's pretend that you've got some horns coming off of there, and that's your aleph, and it says ox, and it's very, very strong. So that will be how we'll memorize it, but remember most of all that an ox is not a very noisy animal. It's not noisy like a dog or a chipmunk. It's more silent. It's just plodding through, and your aleph isn't going to make much noise of its own. It's got to have a friend with it to make a sound. So we're going to learn some other sounds for aleph in just a little bit, and when I teach you your vowel sounds, I'll probably use an aleph because it's so easy to put whatever sound I want to underneath it with and that can become a syllable all by itself, but often it has another consonant after it. So the second letter, oh no, I wanted to tell you one more thing. Each letter of the Hebrew Alephbeit also has a number. So the aleph is, because it's the first one, number 1, okay? The second letter of the Hebrew Alephbeit is this, b, and remember it has a dagesh in the middle, and it says b. When you see that dot, make a point with your tongue, or your lips, in this case, b. All right, so this one says b, and this is the second letter, so it's also the number 2 in Hebrew. And a lot of people say this looks like a house. Now, you have to understand, back in the time of Abraham, the house was probably a tent. And so if you can imagine, this is the tent floor, and this is the post, and there's no flap in front of it. It's just open to the breezes, okay? Maybe we can say that's the window that we're looking out. But either way, that's, in fact, the word for house is bait, so it makes sense. So we're going to think of this as a house, and it says b, and now make sure when you say b sound, and this is true in all phonics, don't say ba, don't say ba, but try to make it really short, b. It's just the b sound, okay? Because we need a vowel under it. You could say ba, b, or b, or bo. We're learning this, okay? The next letter looks really similar, and I'm not going to give it a new number because it uses the same thing, and this one is a v sound. Now, there are a lot of different theories as to why they have different sounds, and I won't get into all of them except to say that in our Hebrew, when we're learning, we just don't put the dagesh in it, so there's no point that you make with your lips and tongue, so it just kind of flows out really slowly. So this is a v sound, okay? So that's how we do it. There are other letters in the Hebrew Alephbeit that make a v sound. We'll come to those in a little bit. So the next one is supposed to be looking like a camel. It's the number 3, but it's gimel. And even the word gimel sounds like camel. And I just like to imagine this is my camel walking along, and he's kind of flopping along, but let me show you how to make it. You go like that. I should have done that with the other ones. Aleph, Beit, Gimel. Okay, he's my camel, and he's just going along. And he doesn't make a k sound, he makes a g sound, Gimel. But I can kind of see where the word camel comes from in English. So Gimel, once upon a time, Gimel also had a dagesh, but and then when it had the dagesh, it would make a hard g. Your tongue would hit the top of your mouth. Try that g. And without it, it would be more like a g. Okay, but no one does that anymore. So we're just going to leave it as Gimel at any time, whether it has a dagesh or not. So don't worry about it if you see a dot in that one. It's not going to change the sound because we live in modern times. And so we're going to teach you the modern way of doing it. So the fourth letter we're going to teach you today, and the last one, is Dalet. Dalet. And this one is the door. Now remember I talked about the house, the tent didn't have a door. Here's my door. Okay, so sometimes you got to hang the door at the tent and hang it up for some privacy. This is the Dalet, and that's the door. And notice how you make it. You start at the top and you give it a little hook. And that hook will be really important when you're learning to read. You watch for things like that. Just like when you make the bait, it has to have a little bit of an overhang right there. Okay, that floor needs to extend, and that will help you when you're looking for these letters. Now remember last week I told you to go to Genesis chapter 1 in your Hebrew Tanakh, and you should go and try to find all the letters. Well, that's going to be homework again for you, so be really careful. There are lots of different fancy scripts and fonts in Hebrew, just like there are in English, a million different fonts. But you can look for a couple identifying parts, and you'll be able to find those letters very quickly. I was going to tell you one more thing. I was going to tell you that sometimes the Dalet can have a dagesh as well. And this would be in ancient times, not, again, in modern times no one does it. But with the dagesh, it would be a sharp d. So you can really make a point with your tongue. D, dagesh. If you didn't have it, it would be more of a d, and it may be more like a th, even like the. Nobody does this anymore. So I'm telling you this just for interest, okay? So let's just practice making some syllables. Let's see. Oh no, I forgot. I need to teach you some vowels, or we can't add any more syllables because we need those vowels. Last week we learned the kamat and the patach. The next vowel is the chirek. Now we're going to learn more about those sounds later, and I'm not very good at them. Chirek, though, is a little dot. And can you hear this sound in chirek? Let me go back to this one. Kamatz. And that one says ah. Kamatz. Patak. That one says ah. Hiretz says e. And sometimes I. Okay? Because it depends on how quickly we speak. So I'm going to teach it to you in slow motion. But remember that when we're speaking Hebrew, like a native speaker, we're going to speak very, very quickly. So we're getting a little technical here, but I want to help you sound authentic. This one looks like a dot that comes at the top of the letter I. And if we were a Spanish speaker, our I's, of course, say E. So it's like that in Hebrew as well. We say E or I. Okay, if you want to say it very quickly. Now let me show you. There's another way that you can do this vowel. You can do the dot, and then after the consonant, let's say we're going to do this one. So this would be an aleph followed by a hirek, followed by a little letter that we haven't really learned yet called a yod. But when you see those two together, it's going to say E, okay? And here's why. This little yod is like a Y in English. And Y is sometimes a vowel. Just like it is in English, it is like that in Hebrew as well. Sometimes it's kind of like a little vowel, and it makes this E sound. So if I did this in incredibly slow motion, it would be E, E. Okay, we don't really speak in slow motion, but I just want to show you why it's more of an E sound, where this one all by itself is more of an I sound. I, E, okay? Because when you see that, it's almost like you're, maybe it would be like that, E, okay? Because it's a Y in Hebrew, the yod. So that's a lot to teach you at one time. So let me teach you some words. I already showed you this one. So there's my aleph, And there's my hirek with a yod after it. So that says ish. So this word means man. So notice that the word for man has an aleph at the front of it, and aleph is an ox and very strong. I won't go into the rest of it, but that is pretty cool to see. Here's another one. This one says Av, and this is father. Now you know what's really cool about that? The aleph is an ox, very strong. And this is what? Do you remember? The house. He's the strong man of the house. Isn't that cool? And then we have my father, which is the same thing. This time we're going to put a patach. And then we're going to put an E sound after it. Avi. So you see when we're pronouncing it, this one has no sound as we go straight down. A-V. So you're reading up and down. A-V. So you could just do a million different combinations to get the same sounds or to get different words, and you could just combine them in a million different ways, but you have to kind of go up and down. And this is a closed syllable, A. And now we start a new syllable, V, A-V. And that means my father. And you can see the similarity, so you can kind of see where you were coming from. We're going to get some grammar in here that when we want something to be mine, we put an E sound at the end of it. We're going to do one more, and that is beit. Since we've learned these, make sure you can see it. There's our house. And I won't teach you what the tav stands for quite yet, but this one, you can tell it has something to do with the house, and that is a daughter. So I forgot to put my vowel on it. Bat. All right? Ba-at. So this is what kind of syllable? It's closed because we ended it with a consonant. Bat. Okay? And there's no syllable underneath that one, so that helps us know that it's a closed syllable. So that's just a start. So how are we going to practice? Well, I'm going to give you a couple hints today. First of all, you're going to want to make some flashcards. Flashcards are ancient, but you should use them. They really are proven to help you learn things. So make a flashcard for every letter that we've learned so far. Aleph, Beit, Veit, Gimel, and Dalet. And if you want to, go ahead and put the Sheen and the Tav that we learned last week. Now, you're also going to want to put all of the vowels that you learned. Let me put those in a different color. You're going to want the kamatz, the batach, and the hirek, okay? And maybe the hirek yod. So there's 4 of them. 4 of those, and we've totally learned, I'll put those up there, a sheen and a tav last week. So 6 consonants, 4 vowels. Write a line of each, get practice forming them and making them, then start combining them into open syllables. So put a consonant up with a vowel under it and make a whole row of lots of different combinations, many rows. Fill up your page with it. And then start making closed syllables where you have a consonant with a vowel under it followed by another consonant. You can make up a lot of different words. If you want to try to make up English words and spell them with Hebrew letters, that's fine. So some fun ones that I like would be beat, dot, tea, like drink some tea, she, TV, sheet, like pull up the sheet over you, tot, got, shot, Eve, odd, deed, bead, like the beads on a necklace, or Bob. Those are just some words that you could write. Try to write them with English words with Hebrew consonants and vowels. So you have a lot of ways that you could fill up your page. So every single day, I want you to try to write a whole bunch of Hebrew and then read what you've written. And then go to your Hebrew Tanakh, go to Genesis chapter 1, find those letters. There are going to be many, many, many of them on the page. You'll want to be very methodical about it and go through and find all of the alephs and then go find all of the beits and so on. Don't forget to go find all of your vowels as well. I have a feeling you're going to be able to pronounce like a third of the entire page. There are so many different things on that page that you will now be able to sound out. And there'll be things that you don't recognize, but we'll get to those next time. Shalom, that means goodbye.